Okay, so arguably right now, the S25 Ultra is the peak Android phone.
A new design, even if that is somewhat familiar. One of the best displays around, and cameras that can match up with some of the best that you can get. And to me, that sounds pretty familiar because you could say all of that about Google's new latest flagship, the Pixel 9 Pro XL.
Putting phones up against each other used to be so much simpler because it used to just be, oh, that camera is better than that, or this chip is faster than that. And while this still applies in some cases, we're in a bit of a hole at the moment where actually no matter what flagship phone you pick up, whether that's going to be from Samsung or Google, you're going to be getting almost the exact same experience.
Let me start off though with what I think is the most important factor when picking up any new phone, and that is the price. Now, Google prices the Pixel 9 Pro XL at $1,099, which is pretty hefty, but they will also offer you a smaller Pro at $999. The problem here is though, no matter which of these you're picking up, it still starts at a measly 128 gigs, which in 2025 is teetering on disappointing, especially when people now are keeping their phones longer than ever before. And when you turn to Samsung, their minimum storage is 256 gigs, which I think it should just be the basic minimum at this point, but you are going to pay for that storage. You're going to fork out $12.99, which is an insane amount on a phone that, if you listen to the comments, will tell you isn't really a big upgrade over the S24 Ultra or even the S23 Ultra, but that is a whole different video. And whilst the Pixel is definitely cheaper than the S25 Ultra, it really stacks up to it. Let's take its cameras, for example. Now, the Pixel might have a lens less and not quite stack up megapixel-wise to the main camera on the S25 Ultra, but when you do end up looking at these photos side by side, it's a lot closer than you might think. I went and captured about 100 photos on each of these phones, and my conclusion is they're both really great. You might prefer shadows, highlights, and dynamic range on one phone, but then look at pictures from another and think the low light photos look a bit better on there. And you know what? That's absolutely fine. Personally, while I still think the photos that come from the S25 Ultra look great, I do just lean slightly over to the Pixel 9 Pro XL when it comes to that main lens, because I think the processing is just a little bit more natural. When it comes to the periscope lens though, this is where Samsung gives you just a little bit more, because it includes that 3x lens, which I love because sometimes 5x is just a little bit close, and the fact that I can be a little bit further away and still get optical quality is a really nice option. You do get that 2x digital zoom from the main camera on the Pixel, but nothing really beats optical, even though it still does a pretty good job. Now, for the 5x lens, I really think it depends on what lighting you take your photos in, which makes one of these better over the other. Outside in daylight, I struggle to pick between the two of these because honestly, there is very little between them and details are actually great on both. When it comes to lower light photography, I think here the Pixel just stands out because I think you just get a little bit more detail in the shadows, and I really like these photos. Switching to the ultra-wide lens though, Samsung did upgrade that with the S25 this year, and it brings it more in line with the Pixel. And while I still prefer the Pixel's ultra-wide, I do think though it's all preference when it comes down to cameras and liking one over the other, and it's not my job to tell you which camera you should prefer on the Galaxy or the Pixel, because we all like something a little bit different, and that's absolutely fine. Now, switching to video, I think both phones have improved over the last few years because, let's be honest, they've been playing catch up to the iPhone, and now both of these phones do a really nice job. Watching both videos side by side, I might just prefer the S25 Ultra over the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and these are both shot at 4K 30. And while the Pixel does look a little bit more natural to life, it also looks a little bit dull, whereas the S25 Ultra is slightly more pleasing to my eye at least. Dynamic range is great on both, but I think in lower light, the S25 Ultra just has those better details, and the Pixel is lacking ever so slightly. And stabilization wise, I'm going to give it to the S25 Ultra pretty easily here. I just think that this is a tad better than we see on the Pixel. There is one big upgrade on the Galaxy S25 Ultra which the Pixel just doesn't have, and it's the fact that this year Samsung upgraded their video so you can now shoot in log. Now for those of you that don't really know what log means, basically, the camera records a flat, low contrast image with a really wide dynamic range, which basically means it captures just more detail than the regular camera. So you can color this after the video has been taken and make it look how you would like. And for a lot of people, I really don't think that this is a big deciding factor, but for creators, this is a big step up in pro video. And the fact that the Pixel 9 Pro doesn't have this log video recording really does make me lean on the side of the Galaxy S25 Ultra for when it comes to taking videos. What about the day-to-day though, using these phones? And I haven't had as much time with the S25 Ultra as I have with the Pixel 9 Pro XL, but this display on the S25 Ultra, it is something else. They both have flat displays whether you pick up the Pixel or the S25 Ultra, but the Galaxy S25 Ultra's display is possibly my favorite display that I've ever used on a phone. Now, I don't know whether this is just down to the smaller bezels that make it look a little bit more premium than the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and because of those smaller bezels, you get a more immersive experience than the Pixel. And I know that the display on the S25 Ultra is essentially the same display that was on the S24 Ultra, but still, the display on the S24 Ultra was my favorite display that I've used in a phone. And I know that the peak brightness might not be as high on the Galaxy S25 Ultra as it is on the Pixel 9 Pro XL, but it does have something up its sleeve still that was introduced last year, and that is the anti-reflective display. It is so good. So have a look at this. You can see that there's almost no reflectiveness here on the display, but if I bring up the Pixel, you'll notice how much more reflectiveness there is on the Pixel 9 Pro XL compared to the Galaxy S25 Ultra. And just the anti-reflective coating, especially outdoors, gives you a much better experience when you're viewing content. And to be honest, everyone should take note from Samsung and just steal the anti-reflective coating because it is such a game-changing feature. I absolutely love it. Using both these phones for the same tasks honestly is pretty on par. So watching your favorite movies or spending too long on Instagram or TikTok, you're going to get pretty much the exact same experience with how these phones run. Where you will see a difference though is in what is powering these phones. On the Pixel 9 Pro XL, we know that we get the Tensor G4, but powering the S25 Ultra is the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy. And let me tell you, when it comes to pure power here, there is absolutely no contest when it comes to Tensor and the Snapdragon 8 Elite. If you want more graphic intense performance on games, then honestly, the S25 Ultra, it is just better than the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and there's no argument about it. This also isn't a surprise. Tensor just isn't built for those graphic heavy intense tasks, and while most people won't really be able to tell, for those of us that can, there really is only one choice when it comes to pure power. And that is important when you come to those graphic heavy intense tasks like maybe video editing, exporting, or playing some like AAA games if that's what you're into. But the day-to-day experience, even though the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy is much more powerful and is just better overall, day-to-day wise, the Tensor G4, it really stacks up. And just to talk about battery very quickly, both of these phones easily get me to the end of the day. The Pixel will get me to the end of the day just under 20%, but so far with the S25 Ultra in the time that I've been using it, this will get me to the end of the day with about 30% left. So if I forget to charge it overnight, I know I can probably do the morning of the next day on the same battery charge. Let me touch on AI, and as much as I kind of hate the phrase at this point, it is still a huge selling point for companies and their phones right now. There really is very little between the two when it comes to its AI offerings, and that's not a surprise because Samsung have worked really close with Google to give you that AI experience, and they're just basically the same features, just named differently. Object removal, audio eraser, and circle to search. Like, there isn't much you get on one that you don't get on the other, except for the Gemini extensions. Now, while I still think AI is a little bit of a gimmick and you still have to do a lot of work to get AI to help you, I think that this is closing the gap on that. So now being able to ask Gemini to go into your emails, find a train that you've booked, then add that to a calendar without having to do it yourself really does eliminate a lot of the work that you need to do. So in the next couple of months, in the next year or so, when this is adapted a little bit more and it comes to more Android devices, this is AI that I can actually use and find useful. If I had to pick though between Galaxy AI and Gemini on the Pixel, I'd go with Galaxy AI. I feel like this is just a little bit more seamless and easier to use, and Samsung have actually done a really good job with it here. There obviously isn't a lot between these phones anymore, but there are still some slight differences. For example, on the S25 Ultra, you get UFS 4 storage compared to 3.1 on the Pixel. You get that 3x and 5x telephoto lens compared to the 5x on the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and the addition of the S Pen, even if it does come without Bluetooth. And granted, the S25 Ultra gives you a lot more, but it also costs more, like $200 more, and you don't get the option of a smaller Ultra like you do with the Pixel. And despite the Pixel 9 Pro XL having a much less powerful chip, it really does stack up day to day. Listen, trying to pick between Samsung and Google, it's not an easy choice, and it's made even harder now with the addition of a really nice ecosystem for both phones. They both offer watches and headphones, which is overall just really nice. But if you gave me that ultimatum and said that you could only pick one of these phones to use for the rest of 2025, I think I'd side on the edge of picking the S25 Ultra, because for me, it's a more premium experience, and yeah, I know you're paying for it, but I just love the Galaxy S25 Ultra, and overall, I feel like in 7 years' time, like both Google and Samsung offer 7 years of updates, in 7 years' time, the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy is going to hold up a little bit better than I think the Tensor G4 will on the Pixel 9 Pro XL. Like I said, if you're on the fence and having to pick between the S25 Ultra and the Pixel 9 Pro, I don't envy you because it's a really difficult decision. But let me know what you think of both of these phones in the comments below, and let me know whether you picked one over the other, or maybe you've swapped out your Google Pixel 9 Pro for the Galaxy S25 Ultra. Before you head off, make sure you subscribe to the Android Authority YouTube channel, and if you do that, then I will see you in the next video.